Hey guys, this is Justin at the Survivor Review. Today we're talking about a movie that I could not wait for. I was looking forward to this movie so much. It's the 31st movie to feature this character, and the 29th produced by Toho. I'm of course talking about Shin Godzilla, also known as Godzilla Resurgence. This is the first Godzilla movie made by Toho in 12 years, since Godzilla Final Wars. So yeah, there's a lot of hype for this. I'm a die-hard Godzilla fan, have been since I was a kid. I love these movies so much, I'm a huge fan. And I actually really liked the 2014 American film. I really enjoyed it, a lot more than most people did. Yeah, it's very flawed, but I found it entertaining, and it at least got the character right. There at least felt like I was watching Godzilla, so that made it work. I enjoyed it. But nothing beats a Toho Godzilla movie, and everything from the trailers made this look like it was going to be a very different type of film. And for the most part, it is actually. This movie is really different than Godzilla movies in the plot structure and in the way the story is handled. It's not as crazy or as wild as the series can get, especially with Godzilla Final Wars being just insanity. It's not that crazy, it's a lot more toned down, a lot more serious. But even then, when it's serious, it's also one of the weirdest Godzilla movies with some of the stuff it does with the character. It gets really bizarre and absurd at times. I don't really have to go into the plot of this movie, because the plot is very simple, despite it being a very complex movie with a lot of characters. The essential gist is that this movie is a full-on reboot, which is actually a first for the Toho films. Usually, Godzilla movies, whenever they reboot them, they're always a direct sequel to the original. So it's still a sequel in a sense. But this one, no, it totally discards the original. It is a full-on reboot. It basically plays off like a modern-day version of the original Godzilla. Like, what would happen if Godzilla attacked us in modern day? This is what would happen. Because the plot of the movie basically is Godzilla lands in Japan, and the Japan government and everybody there has to figure out a way to defeat him. That's a simple gist. This movie gets really complicated because there's a lot of characters, a lot happens in the movie, there's a lot of talking, a lot of political debates, and a lot of that stuff meshed together with Godzilla attacking Tokyo. And I actually really like this movie. I think it's one of the most unique Godzilla films ever made, actually, and it's very good. It has some flaws, it's not completely perfect, but when it gets it really right. This is the only Godzilla movie to come close to the feel and tone of the original film, to be honest. Since the original was this very serious, dramatic film, this movie has those elements, and when it does that, when it's not doing some of the crazy over-the-top stuff, when it's actually down and dirty and serious, it feels much like the original. And that was something I have never felt in a Godzilla sequel before until now, and I thought that was so unique. Remember how the early trailers for the 2014 film had that foreboding sense of dread to it? But the movie didn't quite deliver on that. It did not have the same feel as those trailers. This movie has that feel to it. It has this sense of dread and scariness to it that I've never felt in any of the Godzilla sequels, or even the 2014 one, which I felt we were supposed to. And there's a lot of dramatic stuff in here, including moments where like you see a family in a building quickly packing up to leave, and then Godzilla walks by and just knocks the building down. Stuff like that that harkens back to the original, where you actually saw civilians getting hurt or getting killed by Godzilla's destruction. And speaking of Godzilla, holy shit. Godzilla in this movie, at times, is terrifying. Godzilla's legitimately scary in this film. Not at first, I'll get to that in a minute, but when Godzilla is there in full Godzilla mode, it's terrifying. The look of Godzilla is badass. Just this like angry looking, burnt up, scarred, bloody character, and I love the look of Godzilla. It's a very cool, unique update to the character that still sticks in line with with what we've seen before, but it's just a new take on the design of the character, and I thought that was very unique. But they do a lot of stuff with Godzilla's character in this movie that, if you're one of those purist fans who doesn't want anything changed with the character, you will hate it. Because they do a lot of different stuff with the character, but it still has the essence of Godzilla, he's just doing different stuff. This isn't like the Matthew Broderick 1998 film, where that was totally a different creature, it didn't even fit the bill of Godzilla. This one still is Godzilla, despite him doing a lot of different things in it, and even they do a lot of interesting stuff with the character, because when you first see him, he is not what you expect. He actually morphs and evolves as the movie progresses. So I'm really going to say, so the first time you see Godzilla, you're just going to be like, what the fuck? Because that was my exact reaction. I was just like, huh? I did not expect that at all. So that was very different. I like that. I like the build-up to seeing the classic Godzilla that we all know and love. Despite one kind of issue I didn't like was when we see Godzilla in his full form, there was no real introduction to him. It just had a dude running a room going, Godzilla's ashore! And then it cuts to a shot of Godzilla walking. And it's like, oh, okay, that was kind of underwhelming. Godzilla in this movie is actually full-on CGI, and there's a lot of moments where he didn't look like it. Yeah, there are some shots where he does. There's some really obvious ones where he does. The CGI is very hit or miss in this movie. Sometimes it looks amazing and incredible. Other times it looks very bad and low quality. I don't have too much of an issue with that. And there's a lot of cool shots that are shot like you would shoot a guy in a costume. So it kind of still felt like the classic Godzilla footage that we would see in other movies. So I like that, but there's also some really great other angles of Godzilla that you couldn't get with a guy in a costume. One of the ones I love is just a shot from inside a car, just driving along the road, just kind of like looking up at Godzilla. It looks like you're in a car, just like looking up at Godzilla. And I love that shot. That shot was great. Cool shot with his tail, it's kind of like going past the buildings. I thought that was really good. The only problem I really have with Godzilla is that he's very limited in movement. He kind of just like, he has his hands like this, and kind of like lumbers, kind of like that. And I wish he had a bit more freedom of movement. I wish like I could have used more of that. But that aside, I love Godzilla. Oh my god, there's this one scene at night with Godzilla where he uses atomic breath. And that scene was terrifying and disturbing and just insane, the level of destruction in that scene. Remember the shot in the original Godzilla movie where like the city is on fire as Godzilla like walks by? Basically that, and that was like, holy shit, that whole scene was just dramatic. I love the music in that scene too. The music in that scene just like amped up the craziness, the scariness of that scene, and I just love that so much. Godzilla's screen time in this movie isn't a whole lot, but you can't really complain about it because Godzilla never really had a whole lot of screen time in the other movies to begin with, so that's not an issue. My only kind of issue with that is the climax of the movie with the final battle against Godzilla. I guess let's say that without spoiling what happens. I wanted to see Godzilla do a little bit more. He doesn't do as much in the ending as I would have wanted him to do, especially with there's a long stretch without Godzilla leading up to that climax. The movie starts out right away with Godzilla, actually. There's not a whole lot of build-up. Like, he just appears right away at the beginning, which is really cool. Then he appears in the middle, and then he appears all the way at the end, and the biggest stretch with no Godzilla is from the middle to the end. So I just felt like that long stretch without Godzilla, the payoff wasn't as good in the climax. This movie also uses a lot of music and sound effects from the original film, and thought that was so cool. I love hearing the classic Godzilla theme, I love hearing the military march, all that stuff worked well, and even meshed in well with the new music that was done for the movie. I actually liked the new music score for this film. And then they use a lot of classic sound effects as well, which I thought was really cool. Whenever Godzilla roars, it's the classic roar from the original film. Whenever he's stomping on the ground, it's the original footstep sound effects. I loved all of that. I thought adding that in was just so cool and just made it feel like Godzilla. And one of my issues is with the characters in this movie. There's a crap ton of them. There's a lot. And I was never really invested in them as characters. I didn't really care for a lot of them. It took a while to find out who the actual main guy was, because the first half hour of this movie is just quickly cutting back to all these different people, introducing all these new people and how they're dealing with Godzilla. And I'm just like sitting there, I'm like, I don't know which one's supposed to be the main guy. And then you kind of emerge as like, okay, that is the main dude, okay. But even then, he still gets overshadowed by every other character in this movie because there's so many of them that I was never really invested with them. And I just felt kind of disconnected with the characters because I didn't have a main guy to really root for because there's so many people. That and the use of subtitles in this movie, I don't want to say subtitles, I want to say captions or title cards. Because every time they cut to a new location, there's a title card telling us where it is. Every time we're introduced to a new character, there's a title card telling his name and their occupation. And there's a lot of characters in this movie. So every time we cut to a new person, it was like, so-and-so, the head of defense. It's like, oh, okay. And yeah, this probably works a lot better in Japan where you're able to just watch the movie and then look at the subtitles, see who the person is, and move on. But it was kind of hard watching a subtitled version of the movie where you have to read subtitles of what the people are saying while looking up to read subtitles of who the people are. It's kind of like, okay. It kind of got to the point where like halfway through the movie, I kind of stopped reading the captions, the title cards. I kind of stopped reading those. I was like, it's okay. Like, I'm not going to remember who this character is anyway. He's probably just going to appear for a few scenes. Like, they have title cards for characters who just, like, appear in one scene. And it's just there to, like, deliver some exposition. And I swear there's one scene where the title card says something like the defense building, floor 2. And I'm like, do we really need to know that we're on the second floor of this building? Oh, whatever. So some of that didn't work. I didn't feel the need for a lot of those. There's a lot of political overtones and a lot of satire of the Japanese government in this movie that, yeah, most of it flew over my head because I'm not familiar with that. So that's something that might be lost with a lot of American audiences, especially because the movie focuses on that stuff a lot. But I really liked most of that anyway, even not totally getting what the joke is. I liked a lot of that because I like seeing how would a modern society deal with a giant monster appearing in the city. And that's what this movie plays out as. It's very stripped down, not as over the top or as ridiculous as the other movies get, which is what makes it stand out from the other films in the series. It's really well directed visually, has a lot of good camera angles, very well done. It's a lot more visual than some of the other films. It takes chances with the character of Godzilla, which I really like. I mean, we're 29 movies in. You can do whatever you want. I'm okay with interpreting the character differently as long as you get the essence of the character right, which they did. I'm all for different stuff. If you're a Godzilla fan, you'll definitely like this movie. Just know to expect some different stuff. Again, there's a lot of weird-ass stuff in this movie that's very different from other takes on Godzilla. So out of 10, I'm going to give this movie an 8.5 out of 10. Just an awesome reboot for the series that does some new and interesting stuff, but still brings it back to the core of the original film, and still has that feel of the original film, with Godzilla being this metaphor for a nuclear bomb. So I love that. Just definitely worth checking out if you're a Godzilla fan. Just an awesome, very unique movie that I really enjoyed. It was so great just seeing a new Godzilla movie on the big screen. I had never seen a Toho Godzilla film in theaters. This was my first time, and that was an awesome experience. Just seeing the Toho logo on the big screen was just something that was very surreal and just really cool. I love that. So yeah, that's all I got to say about Shin Godzilla. I mean, I know there's probably a lot more I could talk about, a lot more stuff I could delve into, but either way, that's about it for now, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.